I love my nature quilts, and I created this one for all of us to practice a little more time with our really cool quick bias, that stained glass effect in the leading. Let's get started. Super easy project today, and I've got a really cool printable in the link below right here where you can see your very own Monstera leaf. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is just hang on to this. I'm going to talk you through how to enlarge it to the size you want, but let's first talk about supplies. The quilt you're seeing on the back wall here, and let me get out of the way so you can really enjoy it for a second. This quilt is 34 inches by 42 inches, so technically I had purchased a yard of fabric and I was able to use that on the front. So for the cream, my background, I actually need 2 yards of fabric, a yard for the front and a yard for the back. These are all wonderful Robert Kaufman Artisan Batiks. So my light green here, I have a yard of that as well because of the width I need for my vein work. And then on the dark green, I've got a yard and a quarter just to make sure I've got plenty for all my tracing and everything there, as well as putting the binding on the quilt. Also, if you've never seen the videos I've done, like my poppy quilt, where I'm talking a lot about the stained glass applique technique, we're using the Clover Quick Bias. It's a bias tape that is 1/4 inch wide, and it's already has a fusible web on the back of it. So it's already ready to be set down with the Clover mini iron, which works perfectly. I'm going to show you a bunch of tricks with that today. And then last, you'll need your 3.0 millimeter twin needle to sew down. We're going to spend a lot of time sewing on the leading today, show you those tricks as well again. And then all of my cutting was done with my favorite little rotary cutter, the 14 millimeter Shark Applicutter. That's what you're going to need to create the project. Now, as I said, I would like you to go ahead and print out your printable first at regular size, the 8.5 by 11. But I often use an application in my computer that is called Poster Razor. And so poster and razor, the two words put together. And the way it's used is you create your JPEG here or your bitmap, and you just enlarge it to whatever size you want. So in my settings, I was setting it at about 30 inches this way, which got me about 40 inches this way, which is going to fit beautifully into my yard of fabric. Let me show you what it looked like as it came out of my printer. So this here is my applique pattern. And it's about, let's see, 4 by 5, about 20 sheets of paper. And I can use it over and over again. I just put a little bit of tape in each of the corner spots to hold it down. And so what you can see here is I've actually done a little bit of darker line and lighter line so that you would see the difference. Let's look at the quilt one more time so you understand what you're really going to be doing here. The dark green fabric is one giant piece that goes down first. So this dark green fabric is traced as one interior or one complete outline. Then the light green, the vein work that we're doing, that's going to be done as a separate piece, a secondary color. So I need a whole other tracing for that. So I'm going to trace all of these dark outlines onto my fusible web, and I've spliced my fusible web together to make sure I've got plenty because it's 17 inches wide. So you trace all your dark outlines onto one, and then on the other, you're going to trace all your vein work and your skinny lines that you're seeing here. And that'll be created as light fabric. I hope that makes sense. I've recently picked up this awesome Caterpillar. It's a light table that is fantastic. And on my printout, the printout has already been transposed for you, so you don't need to flip it around. And again, this is an organic quilt, so even if you did flip it, it wouldn't matter because it's just a leaf, right? It's beautiful in its asymmetry. So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to get my light table here centered underneath my design. Because this printout I've created is so large, I'm going to use 2 pieces of fusible web for each of the tracing. So you need 4 total yards of your heat and bond feather light. And if you haven't used this stuff before, it's obviously wonderful, but it's a paper side and a shiny side is the glue. We're always drawing on the paper. Now, when I'm using pieces that are so large, I want to be able to iron them down very nicely at my ironing station. So I'm not even going to bother to to tape these layers together. Sometimes I'll tape on a small little piece. But what I want to do when I'm using these huge pieces like this, where everything's going to be traced on, is I'll take a Sharpie marker first, and then I'm just going to make a couple of like straight line registration marks to draw right through. And right now I know I have my quilt below here, so I'm making sure that I'm only drawing through where the paper is. In case I accidentally made a mistake, I would not want to get any marker on my quilt. You wouldn't have your quilt below because you haven't made your quilt yet. These straight lines are going to allow me to splice these two pieces of paper back together and get them lined right up. And just a quick reminder, you're tracing once for your light colored vein. Let's do that together. And then you'll trace a second time for the dark color, the outline, the whole portion of your Monstera leaf. So right now I'm just drawing these lines. You see the lighter shades of lines, and I can actually see all the way through the paper because our printables are already flipped in the appropriate direction, or they've already been transposed for you. So you can use a light table, or if you have a light enough surface, I can actually see where I'm working right down here. And I tell you what, I bet you understand what this all means here. I just wanted you to be able to see, we're just tracing that vein work now, but I bet you're dying to see it come together in fabric and work with that twin needle. So let me set these aside because I do have it prepped out, ready to go, and I can finish this one up for another quilt another time. And I love how portable the light table is, so we'll just set it over there for a second. And now I want to really talk about how we're going to press these down. One of the things with the Heat and Bond Feather Light is it's such a lightweight glue that the more you iron it, actually the more it breaks down, and then it won't hold. So we really only want to iron it once. So what I did is I took the big dark green portion before the light green was ever even here, and I took my nice big Panasonic iron here, and I was able to just press and lift and press and lift as I worked my way all the way around the quilt, making sure all of the dark green was completely anchored, and I let it cool down for a second. Then, once that was all put together, what I then did after everything was cool is I peeled the paper off the back of the light green as well. And then starting at the top here, I've anchored it, but one of the things I wanted to teach you when we're making these really narrow applique pieces is I can really bend this fabric. So even if it's not positioning itself perfect, or if I have these bumps and lumps, what I've done is very slowly, and this slowly is the key. When I was quilting my quilt, there was a couple pieces that came up early because before I stitched them down is what I'm saying, because I didn't iron it. Look how slow I'm going. I want you to see, you can even almost see the colors changing a little bit, like it's a little darker from behind where I've ironed. And then I'm also able to bend my vein work here, just so I can get that really fun organic feeling and a real easy line to stitch along. And I can bring my tip right to where I want it and hold it in place. And I'm just slowly, slowly doing this with the Clover Mini Iron. And even though the Clover Mini Iron is pretty much a direct heat source, I'm going to still let it heat up for a couple more minutes before I even do the next portion, because I want to make sure it's nice and hot. Because if it's not nice and hot, then these parts start to lift up, right? And that can be kind of frustrating when you're machine quilting. So let's go ahead and set this down, and then we're going to talk about putting the lead on. And this one I'd already been playing with, and my iron must have been a little bit cool. I was going to show you this trick down here, where even if some of your pieces run a little long, even though you did a great job tracing and a great job cutting, every now and again these will shift a little bit because of the nature of what we're building. So if it runs along like that, all you need to do is press it down to the edge, and then we're just going to trim it with our scissor. Because the next step is we're going to take our really cool Clover Quick Bias, and we're going to go ahead and prepare to do what I'm calling the leading, if this looks like stained glass, or we're just going to say the trim work. Now, I want you to start your trim work on the center of the project, just like any other quilt would, but we are not working on the entire quilt. We're only on the quilt top. We're not using batting. We're not using backing for this. What I'm going to do to show you how to do these circles is I'm going to start to peel back the paper to expose the glue. My iron is nice and hot. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to stick this down in one location, and I'm trying to get the seam where the dark green meets the cream color basically halfway underneath the leading. And when I get into these really tight arcs, this is why we're starting here, I can slowly curve it around by pressing and heating and letting it go. I've also found that you can almost do like a pinch fold if you need to, because you won't have any problem stitching through that with your twin needle. And sometimes that allows us to get that sharper corner. But I did find that one of my keys is when working with our quick bias, going slow and then also letting it cool in the corner as I'm coming around. And make sure you put your iron back down on its stand, because it will burn through everything it touches. And then I'm just going to trim my leading so that it fills in the line I want. And then once these little pieces are done like this, we're going to go on over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch them down with that twin needle. Let me show you anchoring around a circle one more time, and then I'll sew around these while I'm over there. The Clover, this quick bias, the black bias tape here, it feels kind of tacky. You think it might hold, but I really want you to take the time to iron it. And remember, it's multiple layers of fabric folded on the bias, so you really got to get it hot to stick. Okay, and I'm just going to move this a little bit. I sure love playing with this stuff, and I absolutely love the look of what it does for the finishing on the quilting and that design element. Okay, so I'm coming around this circle. This is a little bit larger circle, so a little easier to handle the arc. But see, on this side, I'm just going to heat it, let it cool a couple seconds so I can bend it, heat it, and then I'm coming right back over that top where I'd been working before. Heat that up. Covered up my little stand. So let's go ahead and stitch these down so you can get a feel for that. And we're going to head over to the machine. And at the machine, I've already done a little bit of management and adjustments here. But what I've got is I have 2 spools of thread because I'm running a twin needle. So each eye needs to be threaded with its own spool of thread. And I have a single bobbin of black thread also in there. The reason I'm stitching right now on only the quilt top is it will zigzag, as I'm going to show you, on the back side. And I don't want that to show up on the back of the quilt, only on the quilt top itself. You can also hopefully see I've got this wonderful thread stand over here, which is holding that second spool of thread. So there's one here and there's one over here. Oh, looks like I'm stuck on my wonderful press board there. Okay. So now what I'd like to do for us is I'm going to start on a little bit of an easy run. Try to get these threads out of the way. And I'm looking at the center of the presser foot right now. There's a little line on it. And one of the things I don't want to do is backstitch because of the way my twin needles are set up. So I'm just going to think in a forward motion. And the machine's set up for straight stitching, but we are doing it with the twin needle work. So my thread tension is a little bit lower so that it can zigzag nicely on the back edge. That I'll show you in a minute here, and I'm just slowly going around. Now I'm coming into this sharp point that we created, and I'm going to take one more stitch and stop, and then I'm going to go into a needle up position. And sometimes I have to do this with the project where I'm going to completely rotate it, and my quickest rotation is this way. Like this. And then I'm still in that corner where I pivoted. I didn't move the anchor point away very far, and now I'm just coming right back down along that opposite edge of that circle. And it's kind of like you're towing a trailer. I'm just going to ask you to make wide corners as you're swinging around. So as I come into this arc, I'm watching the interior needle, taking it just nice and slow, and my feed dogs are up, helping all along the way. And this one, because it's more of a broad corner, I'm going to pre-turn the quilt, and then as that needle comes up, I'm really turning fast in the corner, and then every now and again, if I get to a point where I feel like I'm coming out of where I want to be, it's much better to lift those needles back up and go ahead and, oh, got that thread there. Here we go. I'm coming right in here to finish that up. Okay. Now I'm going to put my needle up. I'm not going to use any kind of thread cutting mechanism. I'm just going to slide it out of the way. And I had those scissors somewhere handy. There they are. Let's cut this and the bobbin. And I want you to see what the back looks like so you'll really understand why we are doing this only on the quilt top. So here's my zigzag, right? And so I've used the black thread so it shows up nicely. But I don't want it to show on the back of my quilt project. So I'm going to do this around everything. Might as well trim that bobbin thread while I'm here. And then let me flip it back over so you can see the top where I've been working. Just like this. And I like to come through each and every time and trim out those threads that I left behind as I was getting started. And then the next thing I like to do after I've done all my center hole sewing is I want to go ahead and anchor down the interior vein work. I don't want that popping up either, of course. So let's go ahead and show you how I do that. And it's pretty cool when you look at the way that they're set up. If you follow one edge, you can come up this way, anchor, and back out this way. So that's real simple. Let's go ahead and show you one of those. And for this, I'm going to catch this outside edge eventually. So I want to start on my outside edge. I do like to trim my leading so that it matches the same angle. And then I'm just going to come in here. And now what I'm trying to do is make sure I don't cover up all of the light green. So if I have to cheat a little bit to the outside edge of the lighter green, it's not a bad plan. And again, slowly I'm going around, applying the quick bias to that applique raw edge. And these are pretty darn simple for the twin needle work because look at the long paths I'm creating. So those circles are a really great place to work because they're in the center. But if you've never done the twin needle work, you might want to actually wait to put those down at the very end, right? Just don't even bother putting the lead down until you've done all of these. These are really great places to start. And I was also telling that story to pause for a second because look, I'm here at a real hard angle. So I want to show you kind of that pinch fold idea again. So I'm going to kind of hold my iron here for a second to get it hot. And then I'm basically bending it on top of itself. Oops, I want to go the other way. Actually, I want to set this down so I don't burn myself while I'm doing this. There we go. So I kind of had like a 45-degree little fold. And then when I flatten it down, I'll be able to catch that with my twin needle work ever so nicely. Like that. And I'm just going to run this out here. Nice slow pace, getting it all bound, all anchored down there, that glue. And then depending on the size of the sewing machine you're using, you might find that just doing one piece at a time is your safest way so that pieces aren't popping up constantly on you as you're working. I have a pretty nice large open space, so the manipulating of the quilt around in the head of the machine doesn't seem to bother me too much, but it could be a nice point for all of you. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to stitch this down. So I want to go at my path of least resistance. So I'm going to come up this side here. And again, I'm going to lower that presser foot while I've got everything in my way here, and then I can kind of get myself organized like that. I'm hoping you can all see okay. Find my presser foot controller here, and here we go. My foot controller. And again, not back stitching because of the setup. And now look how easy this is. So you get your confidence up, you get your pace up a little bit, and I'm just letting the machine feed pull the fabric through, and I'm just steering to make sure I'm looking at the little clear line in the middle of that foot. And I'm just trying to keep that right in the middle of my black quick bias tape there. So fun. I'm also using my ear to listen. Every now and again I will break a thread, and you'll be able to tell the difference in the sound if that were to happen. So probably not the best time to be listening to your man sewing rock and roll music in the background. Although I don't blame you for wanting to. Okay. And I'm just going to show you this corner here real quick. and I've got it folded here, so I'm gonna come up to the top edge to catch it. And just like before, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna go with my needle into the up position. I'm gonna quarter rotate my quilt. This is gonna be the easy direction for me. And again, I'm really trying to keep that rotation mark right over, except for I pulled my thread out. There you go. Probably another reason not to show the back of this project until we get it all quilted up. Okay, and then when I go to take this first stitch, I might have a little extra thread in here, so I'm gonna listen to make sure I don't break threads. Oh, that's wonderful, great. And now here we go, we're just gonna roll out to that outer edge, and then I'll talk to you about some of the rest of the machine quilting here. Watch this. Oh, I just love that twin needle work. Okay, again, not back stitching, just gonna pull it out, cut some of my threads here real quick. And look at how nice that all looks. Isn't that wonderful? And that twin needle, the reason we are doing is so I have two parallel lines of stitching and it just looks super polished and professional. Now, follow me back to the quilt. I want to talk about the rest of the quilting here on the wall. So the next step, once all of the black interior leading is done for your vein work, then I would like you to go ahead and make sure that you take with one continuous piece and go all the way around the outside of the entire leaf itself. That'll anchor all those outside edges. Now, if you look real closely, the next thing I did is I loaded a dark green thread and I stitched on the interior, free motion machine style, and I'm doing that to make sure that I'm holding down this applique piece. Well, the big piece will stay forever, but I've also done it with the light green. And on the light green, I've also stitched on the interior of the vein work. It gives it a little more character, but this way, if any part ever tried to sneak out from inside of the lead, that machine stitching is holding it down also there. And then the last step is something that is kind of a traditional Hawaiian style machine quilting, although they do it by hand. It's just echo quilting. So if you look here, I've used the width of my presser foot and I've just followed the interior. I did one pass on the inside loop one time, and then everything else was just a simple echo quilting, echo quilting, echo quilting as I went around, just to give it that wonderful organic and kind of hand-done look. So a lot of the process that came into play there was just some fun inspiration, like I said, from other botanical quilts I have seen out there. Wow, I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully you're super excited like I have been to really get in deep and play with this leaded look, this stained glass look, this quick bias, because it is super fun and it adds a whole new element to our quilt. So I'm super excited to be able to present this wonderful botanical project for us all today. Don't spend too much time at your quilting machine. I do need to make sure you get some vitamin D between all of our fantastic episodes right here at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.